Well, thank you all for coming to our Sudden Valley Town Hall, our annual town hall that we have for county candidates, and coming up immediately afterward, our state level candidates. My name's Eric Trower. I'm the Sudden Valley Vice President, and we started putting on these events many years ago, and they are normally very well attended. So thank you all for coming and participating in our democracy. So we have our county level candidates here right now running for sheriff. We also have the county executive candidates and the council at large position B down at the end. So what I'd like to do is give you the opportunity, starting down there at the end, introduce yourself and take a couple of minutes, and then we will jump into some questions from the audience. We'll be passing a microphone around. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, and thank you to this.
You want to do the pledge?
Am I on?
You want to do the pledge, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I went through the trouble to find the flags just now, and so we better make use of it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that. Hello, and thank you to the Sudden Valley community for inviting us here today. I am Carol Frazee, and I'm running for Whatcom County Council at large, position B. I am a small business owner. I am the mother of 2 teenagers. I'm a former teacher, and I'm the wife of a Whatcom Community College instructor. My husband Paul and I, we made Whatcom County our home 20 years ago, and we feel like it's one of the best decisions we've made. I've been representing you on the county council for 11 months now, and my focus continues to be on a healthy Whatcom County. But there's a lot of issues that come before us on the county council. It could be roads, it could be speed limits, it could be so many different things. But when each vote we take, I really take to heart, and I think about the people and reach out to those people if I can, who that affects. But I do focus on a healthy Whatcom County for individual health, for environmental health, and for economic health. And for individual health, we've passed a resolution to focus on the health and well-being of children 0 to age 8, and looking upstream from incarceration, homelessness, and trying to focus on those children in need from age, birth until age 8, and focus on their needs and their families to make sure they have the best start physically, mentally, educationally, and giving them the best start we can, so that's looking upstream, so when they get older that they're healthy and thriving. For environmental health, we are currently updating the shoreline management program to monitor and advise on how to protect our environment. We are seeing the effects of poor planning and protecting through a decreased salmon population and orca population. And we do need to make sure our lands and waters are protected to allow for a healthy environment for all. And then for economic health, together with the Port of Bellingham and the Public Utilities District, we are working together to bring fast, reliable internet service throughout the entire county. And we're starting that project in 2020 with making sure people from Bellingham to Glacier have fast, reliable internet service. And that's going to help the economy thrive for entrepreneurs and for farmers, and give the children also that they have those same opportunities that children in Bellingham have. My experience on the Whatcom County Council these last 11 months has allowed me to build relationships and help our community move forward in a variety of ways. And I love serving on the Whatcom County Council and appreciate your support and to continue our goal of a healthy Whatcom County. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Larson. I'm running for Whatcom County Executive. We've had a lot of new people move into the area over the last little while, but I bet you, I don't know if there's any of you here that recall what this place was like 50 years ago. I was actually in the same room. There was ropes for kids and little tunnels, and I remember as a young person being here and learned how to swim at the swimming pool out here. This was in the early 1970s. My wife actually, my wife is with me today, Danielle here. We lived here in Sudden Valley when we were first married and when we first had our kids. Sudden Valley was an extraordinarily valuable place for people to be. We loved it out here, and I understand that there are some unique issues, but really Sudden Valley is just a microcosm of the issues that are taking place in Whatcom County. We've seen, as I mentioned, 8.5% growth in the last 5 years, and a lot of the challenges that we're seeing throughout Whatcom County really stem from some of the challenges that we see with more people moving to the area, and how do we solve those kinds of issues. So I'm really excited about the Whatcom County executive job. I've been a business owner since my first business. I started in college. I've owned multiple businesses since then. I'm currently the president and the founder of the Whatcom Business Alliance. I've been actively engaged in Whatcom County community activities for the last 35 plus years. I own the Bellingham Bells Baseball Club. I've had leadership positions on a number of different boards in Whatcom County. I've been a Whatcom County Council member as well, and now I want to loan my expertise to this job. And it's really an executive job. We've got a lot of challenges that we're facing. First and foremost, as I mentioned, they tie to growth, but we've got spiraling housing prices and rents. Those are things that can be solved. There's some dynamics that need to take place. That's spurring on issues in Bellingham, where we're seeing rise in homelessness, substance addiction, mental health issues. There's just a lot of challenges that we're seeing that are really being perpetuated by this growth. And there's economic challenges, wages not keeping up with housing prices and other prices. So there's just lots of things to deal with, but there's lots of opportunities as well. Whatcom County is positioned very well for the future, but there's a lot of challenges we need to take care of, and I'm prepared to do that as your county executive.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks to the Sudden Valley Community Association to organize this forum. And my name is Satpal Sidhu, and yes, I want to be your next county executive. I have a passion to serve the community, and I've done that for the last 32 years since I have moved in here. And I bring a very unique set of skills and qualifications to this position. The first thing is that we all know that we are better than our current politics. We have more in common than what divides us. And we should not be paralyzed to solve our common issues just because of this partisanship and putting labels on everything. We even put labels on energy. Solar energy is a liberal energy. Petroleum is a conservative energy. I think we have gone way too far on that. Because if you look at our air, our water, our jobs, our communities, our health, environment, these are not partisan issues. These affect all of us, and we should be able to work on those. And the other part is the consensus doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything. Consensus really means is you come up with a reasonable solution, and people say, I can live with it. That's good enough, because we are never going to get a perfect one-sided decisions. There'll always be somebody doesn't like it. But we have to come to that point that, yes, I can live with it, let's work on. And I think that's something I will work towards, and I have done that in past 30 years in this community. I will work to bridge this divide and make the government work for all citizens, not just one or two groups. That's very important. And I think it takes determination, hard work to transform our county for a better future for our kids and grandkids. And I'm ready to do the hard work. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Elfo, and I've been honored to serve as your sheriff for the past 15 years. I'd like the opportunity to continue doing what we're doing and making more progress. Since I've taken office, crime rates have dropped dramatically. Property crime is down 44%, violent crime is down 24%, burglaries alone are down 63%. The biggest challenge we're having is people with untreated acute forms of mental illness. So we started a mental health deputy program, and we've assigned 2 deputies to intervene early and try to divert people from the criminal justice system into treatment and other services they may need. The problem is, where do we divert them to? Well, working with the county council, and I've been an advocate for the past 20 years, even before I was sheriff, for a mental health crisis stabilization center and substance abuse center where officers can take people directly as an option or an alternative to jail. And it has to be an accountability of safety and in there as well, where people actually are appropriate to go there and they follow the direction. As far as Sudden Valley goes, I think I've been a very good friend of Sudden Valley. 2 years after I took office, I established the Neighborhood Deputy Program, and we've had a series of neighborhood deputies through here that, you know, we cover this area 24/7, but it's part of a full very large patrol area. Now we have a neighborhood deputy that can change his hours, be flexible to take care of whatever problems. As far as emergency management, we've worked very well with the board. We bring them into the fold of our emergency management organization and do special preparations and response plans that are specific to Sudden Valley and work with their security crew on that. We've worked with the fire department and Chief Ralston, who just recently retired. We shared our boat with him if there's any rescues on the lake. Part of the responsibility of the sheriff is to operate the jail. I don't get to build it, but I get to operate it, or I would have built it already. We're in a very crowded situation. The building is deteriorating and space is very limited. So I've created options for the courts who decide who goes in jail and who stays there. So we've increased electronic home monitoring, we've increased work crews, we've increased work release, and we've reduced the population of the jail used by the Superior and the District Court by over 12% in the last year. And I've got the funding and authority to be able to do that. We take the work we do very seriously. We solve virtually all our homicides, except in the ones we haven't, the few we haven't, we work vigorously on those, and we're working very actively on a case now, and I guess you've probably heard of the Mandy Stavik case from 1989 that we recently solved. I feel public safety is mission critical. I began my law enforcement career at a very young age, working graveyard shifts, going to school in the daytime. I got a bachelor's and master's degree in criminal justice. I got a law degree. I've been a prosecutor. I've been a city attorney, and I've served in virtually every facet of local law enforcement and earned incremental levels of responsibility, including police chief and prosecutor. I'm a graduate of the FBI Command College, and I'm able to work with people, the other stakeholders. I'm endorsed by each and every member of the county council. Both candidates for county executive have endorsed me, so whoever gets elected, I'll be able to work with them. I'm endorsed by all the small city mayors. I'm endorsed by all the police organizations, include all the organizations represented, that's the employees of the sheriff's office, but all the police departments as well. I'm endorsed by the professional firefighters and all those who know public safety, who know the need for effective leadership in public safety have supported me, and I look forward to serving you for another 4 years. Thank you.
I'm Joy Gilfillan, and I'm running for Whatcom County Sheriff as well on a very different ticket, so you've definitely got a choice between the two of us. I stipulate that Way does outclass me from the standpoint of law enforcement training. He comes from a 45-year background of mass incarceration, industrial growth. Over the last few decades, we have managed to incarcerate 25% of the world's population, and we only have 25% of the world's incarcerated citizens, and we only have 5% of the world's population. I calculated at one point that we have managed to arrest about a third of the adult population in America. And the problem with that is that we have actually developed a very bad habit in America of creating crisis in the streets. We have serious mental health problems, we have homelessness, we have addiction, we have poverty. What happens when you work on the the downside of humanity is that those are the outgrowths, and it's extremely expensive to continue to incarcerate our citizens. So for the past 10 years, I made a career shift from being a human potentials coach and a business coach And I started studying the mass incarceration industry. What was it about that was causing us so much problems in America? And over the last 9 years, 10 years, I've actually stood up strongly in opposition to the jail tax. I've stood up strongly in opposition to the new jail. I have attended hundreds of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force meetings and other kinds of jail stakeholders meetings, environmental impact statement meetings. I have spent thousands of hours interviewing hundreds of people in Whatcom County to figure out what's the matter with our system and how do we fix it. It never occurred to me when I started 10 years ago that I would run for sheriff. But what I have found in working with Bill and with all of these other members of the task force is that people who get insulated or siloed in different kinds of industries, we tend to not look out of our peripheral vision at what else is going on. And what I've been studying, I raised 2 sons in Whatcom County. I've had some of their buddies be murdered. I've had some of their buddies go to prison. I've found a lot of people have ended up with medical problems and mental health problems. I've had parents that have committed suicide. And it breaks my heart when I see that kind of an outcome. I believe we have an opportunity in Whatcom County right now to transform the way we do the justice and to transform how we do the jail and justice system. I have been through the jail. I do not believe we need to have a new jail. We can move the sheriff's office out of the basement. You can move it to another location, whether it's at the Emergency Operations Center or another location. There is funds available that can help to establish a good, solid sheriff's office. We can expand programs inside the main jail. We can do fixes. I have spoken to people who have been long-term maintenance people at the jail. I've gone through some of the architectural drawings. There was a structural engineer report. A structural engineer was hired to do report in the Design to Last, but he never came back with a structural failure. Everything in that Design to Last report is non-structural problems, and they can be fixed with maintenance. So I propose cut the occupancy load down on the downtown jail, move them to jail number 2, open up even more restrictions on re-entry, institute diversion, pre-arrest diversion or pre-long-term jail diversion, do re-entry programs, do restorative economic programs, bring in Job Corps training. There's a whole pile of things we can do other than continue to arrest people.
Thank you all. What we're going to do now is we're going to open up the floor to questions. We have a microphone over in the back, just waiting for someone to raise a hand with a question of any of these county candidates. Anyone? All right.
Hello, my name is Nancy Allierack. I live in Sudden Valley, and I have a question for the council and the executive candidates. The sheriffs get a pass. Spring, the county council will be asked to vote on the shoreline management plan periodic update, and that is relevant to Sudden Valley because the current Sudden Valley Board plans to tear down this building and replace it with a large event center designed to attract paying customers into Sudden Valley for concerts, shows, and whatever. But under the current shoreline management plan rules, that event center cannot be built. So, council candidate, it was plural in this, but whatever. Will you vote to change the shoreline management plan to accommodate the Sudden Valley Board and their event center? And for county executive candidates, will you direct the county planning and permit staff to accommodate the same?
Well,
So
I
thank you.
I can go first because I'm both.
Oh, you
I'm
are.
on the council and I'm candidate for that. My simple answer is we will not change shoreline management plan to accommodate a particular organization's goals because the top priority is our environment, our lake, and that takes priority. And I will do both as a council member and as a county executive. I'll uphold what I said. Thank you.
And I was going to say, Nancy, that I feel the same. Is if there's a way that it could be built within the parameters of the shoreline management plan program, then it can occur. But we need our water and our land forever. An event center could last 100, 200 years, hopefully. But if there's a way we can put it here, or if it's going in this area, within the parameters, that it can occur. But we do need to protect our environment. We do need protections. We want our grandchildren to have clean water. We want our great-great-grandchildren to have clean land. We want all of that. So that has to be our first priority. We may be able to have both. We may be able to work and make it happen, but we need to protect the environment first.
The shoreline management plan is for all shorelines. That's state regulatory environment, which is where that comes from. And I think if you're talking about this facility and things that are built out in Sudden Valley, really the shoreline that we're talking about is Lake Whatcom. So my focus would really be on how do we improve. I mean, Lake Whatcom represents the drinking water for half of Whatcom County. It's vitally important, and I would advocate, as county executive, I would advocate continued investments in stormwater management systems. And in fact, I think that stormwater is one of the key places where we should invest in the phosphorus retrofits, the phosphorus filtration systems. And I think that there's some new technology, some new innovation that we can use as well that's been proven in other places around the country that we could create some pilot programs and find out how we can actually measure the quality of the water. Now, if the Shoreline Management Act shouldn't be used to stop a project, you know, that's really not what the purpose is. It's really to keep the shorelines clean. And so, you know, either the community will have to decide what the best use for this property is, what this facility is. But, you know, I would just say that as it relates to Lake Whatcom, there are a lot of ideas being proposed. My opponent has talked about all motorized vehicles off all lakes in Whatcom County. I completely disagree with that. We haven't found any traces of hydrocarbon whatsoever in Lake Whatcom, which would come from motorized boats. So to take a blanket program to take all motorized vehicles off every lake in Whatcom County, I think would be short-sighted. I think it would just be, you know, the idea is really just to do something, but I think what we need to do is things that we could actually measure and make an impact, you know. So I think there's lots of things that we can do for Lake Whatcom, and I would make sure that we invest in those things.
Do we have any other questions out there? Okay, while we're getting a microphone to you, let me ask a question of our sheriff candidates. What response can Sudden Valley expect for calls to 911, and how are they prioritized?
Well, I guess I'll start with that. We prioritize all calls that come in through our dispatcher. They triage the calls, and they're assigned into the level of severity and the urgency involved. The Sheriff's Office covers 2,500 square miles. Whatcom County is larger than Delaware in square miles. So we have a huge area, and that's why we developed the Neighborhood Deputy Program, where we have the 24/7 coverage, but it's supplemented by the neighborhood deputy. We're also now supplemented by the mental health deputies who can take care of those problems out here as they occur. We've also have a reserve deputy sheriff program where highly trained citizen volunteers ride with our deputies, and it reduces the need for me to pull someone from Sudden Valley to go to Birch Bay on a call, for instance. The backup is built right into the vehicle, or right into the unit. And one of the things in terms of a response out here that I'm doing is developing a improvement to our critical public safety communication system. We're on 1960s and 1970s technology. We had a study done. We know what we need to do to replace that. It's not the $45 million solution that came out 18, 19 years ago. It's a much lower cost. County Council has been very supportive, and economic development monies have been applied, and our state senator, who's here right now, has agreed to try to help us find some funding for that. And that'll not only improve our ability to respond and communicate from out here, from law enforcement, but the fire service is going to be involved. Even though the sheriff's office is providing the leadership, we're going to rebuild a system that'll serve all public safety first responders. So that should be of help to this community and all of Whatcom County.
My answer is that that's brilliant. And the good news about being a person who's running against an incumbent is he's had 15 years of building a very first-class law enforcement division. There's a roughly 200 staff that work for the Sheriff's Department. I've gone through the emergency operations facility, talked to those people, briefly talked with the undersheriff, talked with other law enforcement. We've got a really first-class program, and congratulations to Mr. Elfo, Sheriff Elfo, for that. What I would do in addition to that, I think that the most valuable thing we can do in communities is start to build community education programs where we teach reconciliation, where we teach conflict resolution, where we actually build restorative justice programs so that we can still start working in communities to take people out of the system prior to having to arrest them and put them into the system. There's a lot of things we can do with substance use disorder, emotional first aid. There's many programs that can be brought forward that can reduce the school-to-prison pipeline, the flow of the teenagers into school-to-prison pipeline. We can also do a lot of things to help elders and women and people with PTSD to deal with stress in today's society. So I would enhance what he's already doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have someone in the audience?
Yeah.
Great.
Is it on? Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks to all you candidates for coming out. Appreciate that. But my question is more specifically for the sheriff's candidates. And the reason for that is that I'm a retired Homeland Security Supervisory Special Agent and a lawyer, so I tend to get more into law enforcement matters than what you might normally have. And what I'm finding from my career is that law enforcement people tend to get divided into two different categories. I'd like to find out on which side of this category the two of you fall. One is the side that tends to promote crime prevention and public safety, officer training, and the other side seems to be the kind of law enforcement person that promotes crime detection and detention. And I'd like to know on which side of that barrier the two of you might happen to fall. And also for the sheriff himself, I'd like more specifics as far as what you think about your officer training with respect to racial profiling and also when it comes to evidence preservation, because that's a very critical thing in the law enforcement system, is that we preserve the integrity of evidence, and I've seen some sheriff's departments that don't do such a great job. So first question first, and then the second question for the sheriff himself, please.
Remind me, I got distracted by question number 2. What was question number 1? Oh, the difference between whether it's...
Your philosophies, your law enforcement philosophies, and which side of that divide that I characterize the divide as.
When I grew up on a farm in eastern Washington, and we had one sheriff that covered Stevens County. I mean, it was like miles and miles, and I used to go out sometimes and ride with him. And we had 30 minutes to an hour and a half between without any backup. And so I grew up learning how to do self-protection and self-reliance and how to help people get put back, you know, if they got themselves in an accident or if there were fights. We didn't just arrest, because it really took people off the streets if you had to arrest them and put them in jail. So I learned a lot about de-escalation and recovery and helping people get their feet back underneath them so that it didn't be as much of a problem. When I moved into the city, I had a whole different experience because it was one of my friends who was killed by the Hillside Strangler up at Western. And I had officers who did outstanding work of arresting Mr. Bianchi and convicting him. Our prosecutor did it. I absolutely 1,000% supported everything that the sheriff's office and the officers did for 40 years. And then one day when I woke up, I felt like Rip Van Winkle suddenly going, you know what, our world has changed dramatically since 9/11, literally. And since 9/11, technology has changed the way that people respond to a 9/11 call. the way that emergency responders and all these things happen, we've gone into a fear-mongering place where we've ended up arresting large numbers of people because we're afraid of the liability if we don't, or we don't have a way to de-escalate from the situation. And I think at the moment, we're actually bankrupting our community. It is so expensive to arrest a person. And I did, to understand it, I went and interviewed 79 people in Whatcom County who had been arrested or were family members. And when I started to examine why they were arrested and how they were arrested, I couldn't necessarily fault the law enforcement officers for the system. I could fault the way that we handled it, the emergency response, how we could have done it differently. And it turned out that out of all these people that I've interviewed, none of them were actually criminals' intent. That was not their purpose. People called 911 to get help for their loved ones. They called them because they were in accidents. And my heart just broke when I realized what we were actually doing. So in answer to your question, I absolutely support law enforcement. I believe we must have first-class facilities. I do believe we have to have the maximum security jail downtown. I think that the second jail that we have, the 150-bed one, could be used differently for reentry programs.
First, sir, thank you for your service to our country and Homeland Security. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the relationship the Sheriff's Office has with our Homeland Security here locally. If it wasn't for that umbrella agency, we wouldn't have access to aircraft that we do now, the Marine Patrol. We have deputies assigned to the Homeland Security Investigations Task Force. We have them assigned to our gang and drug task force, so we've cross-pollinated, and we have a deputy assigned to the DEA task force to combat drug trafficking and those that are bringing heroin and methamphetamine into our community. So we work on that. But you ask, am I more of a prevention sheriff or if I'm more of a tough-on-crime sheriff? I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. We need both, and we need to go out there and fight and arrest and find serious, habitual, violent, dangerous, and career criminals. And that's what we do, our deputies do every day. We have a crime analyst, we have a career criminal deputy that works in the prosecutor's office. So if we have cases that come in there that need a higher priority, he's there to help the prosecutor get what they need and actually sit as a case agent through trial. So I think we've got that pretty well covered. Fighting crime is a high priority, but also is crime prevention. And part of the element we do with our neighborhood deputies is to get out to know the community, to get out and know the kids. We encourage all our deputies to stop by all the public schools and private schools, even in Whatcom County, and have lunch with the kids if time permits. And there's where you build relationships, there's where you build trust, and there's where you model behavior. And when the kids are in 5th grade, they all want to be cops. So it's better they want to be cops than want to be criminals and gang members. So we try to do a good job with that. You ask about our evidence function at the Sheriff's Office. I'm very, very proud of our ability to preserve, retain, and find evidence when it's needed for trial. Well, one of our supervisors that retired now, but he is our evidence locker was a model for the state, and he goes around and lectures for the Criminal Justice Training Commission on the preservation of evidence, how it should be stored, barcoding for all these modern technologies for finding evidence. And he was also one of the people that were involved in the Mandy Stavik homicide, where we found evidence the crime happened in 1989. And when we made an arrest because of a DNA match, and DNA is evidence, in 2017, everything was there. It was properly preserved. And I'm glad to say Whatcom County was the first case in the country to use DNA at trial. It involved an elderly woman that was raped up in Point Roberts, and the DNA match through the FBI laboratory was the first match from the FBI lab that actually went to trial. And I can't take credit for that because I wasn't sheriff, but I'm trying to. So, but it's just the culture we have, the culture of good police work, culture of doing investigations adequately, and ensuring justice for victims. That's another important part of what we do. With the case of Mrs. Stavik, I went out when I first became sheriff and heard about this case. I didn't come up from within the agency. I was a police chief. and went out and met her, and just a hardy old lady out there chopping wood, and met with her every year and gave her updates on the case, and I do that currently with the other homicide victims from our other unsolved cases. Keep in touch with their family. They have to know that we care and we're constantly seeking justice, so thank you.
Just one other thing, Sheriff. Training for your officers, how continuous is it? And also especially in the area of racial profiling.
Excellent question. I'm glad you reminded me. We have a racial profiling training program that all our deputies go through periodically. There's first a large block, and then there's in-service training on racial profiling prevention. And we actually have we have instructors, and we train not only our deputies, but we train all the small police departments in that as well. In fact, one of our trainers was an African-American gentleman who was from Oregon, law enforcement agency, and I just recommended him for the police chief's job in Blaine, so he'll be closer and be able to help us more. And I think having a workforce that reflects the community is important. And we have more minorities in the sheriff's office than percentage-wise or in proportion to the county population at large. So we do a good job of being very inclusive. We just we have a Sikh deputy that's going to be graduating from the police academy next month. So we have a very good and diverse force. But all our training is based on need. We put a team together, and we put together a training program every year for all the deputies to go through all the areas of high liability, officer safety. And what we focused on now is what we call crisis intervention, how to deal with the mentally ill, how to deal with people in substance abuse disorders, and how might we treat them outside the criminal justice system. What options exist as concurrently we try to build and expand those options. We formed a SWAT team because we've had 2018, we had 20 calls with armed and barricaded people. But whenever we dispatch our SWAT team, we have a highly trained crisis negotiation team that travels in tandem. And in 2018, I mean, we've had cases where people were holding a 6-year-old child not willing to let the child leave the house. The dad had mental disorders. And we safely resolved that, and all 20 of them without a shot being fired and no one being seriously injured. So I'm really proud of the work that our deputies do every day. They've got a large area to cover. They're a first-class organization, first-class people, and they deserve and they need the best training possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a question of the county executives?
Yeah, I specifically wanted to ask the county executives. Both of you seem to do a very good job of recognizing the problems that we face around here. The opioid crisis, the homeless crisis, and the need for some kind of a facility to operate as jail, holding facility, or treatment facility. I didn't hear, and I would like to hear, some specific proposals that you would support to solve these problems.
Do you want to start, or you want to? Go ahead. Okay. Thank you, sir, for asking this question. And this has been a question in front of the community since I got onto the county council. I think that we have taken a concrete step that just a couple of Mondays ago, or just previous Monday, 30th of September, we did a groundbreaking ceremony on a $10 million, 32-bed facility. We have 16 beds, so it will be all combined into one facility. That will be called Triage Stabilization Center, where if the deputies arrest somebody and happens to be opioid case or mental issues, they will never take them to the jail. They will actually go there. They will serve them, identify, stabilize, and help them whatever they can. What we are missing in the piece is a long-term facility. There was a private contractor who wanted to do something, but private contractors, their first thing is how much money they can make. If they cannot make money, they leave. And I think we need a public-private type of situation where the community is at the par with the profit-making proposition. So we are a much smaller community compared to Seattle and Tacoma and larger cities. So sometimes hard to attract that private capital to a community like this. And that's why I say that maybe that as a county, as us as citizens, pitch into that partnership and create that. So that's the one piece missing. The last piece missing is that people who are in jail, people who have done crime, but they at the same time they have addiction or other issues, then there should be some way to provide the services in the jail, because those people have to be detained. And that part is missing because our current jail is not amenable to provide those things. Somehow we have to, I'm not really disputing the size of the jail. It could be, I would even say to people, and I've said this throughout my campaign, if we just replace the building of the current jail with a new building, which is, have these services available, that would help a lot. In meantime, we can attract a long-term care facility where the people can stay there 3 months, 6 months, even longer, to help them get off their whatever problem they're having. So that's the specifics I have. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, you know, obviously it's a very complicated and multifaceted issue, and there's lots of different moving pieces that really, as we're out campaigning, we're hearing about a lot of challenges, and first and foremost, we have a housing supply problem, and that trickles down to the low-income housing. So we've got far fewer homes available than we have people that need them, and that's not just low-income housing, but it's also worker housing. You know, we've heard about affordable housing. Well, you know, the housing is affordable to people who are selling their equity in California and moving here, you know, but for people that actually live here that have to create job opportunities here, it's not. So that trickles down and puts a lot of pressure on our homeless issue, you know, on the homeless population. As it relates to that population, you know, because you mentioned you started with substance addiction issues and mental health issues. What we need to do at that level is first and foremost understand that it is absolutely inhumane to allow people to beg on the streets and live in a tent on the streets, and that is not a solution. We should not be looking for places that we're going to locate tent cities. We should not allow tent cities, because there is a broader, a bigger solution. And where it starts is really every person on the street that you talk to. And we had the Bellingham Police Department that went and they did interviews with a bunch of folks. All of them have different reasons for being on the streets. You know, there's some anybody that's on the street because of economic issues. We should have, as a county, we should have a safety net for them. No question about it. And there are lots of programs, there are lots of places to transition people who are in economic circumstances. And then we have people that have substance abuse problems. And we've got people that have mental problems. And I think the solution is starting with an understanding that people that are on the streets, the one common denominator that they all have is they've lost connection. And so my plan would be connect and direct. And in between that would be connect, assess, and direct. And there are model programs around the country. There's an extraordinary one in Boulder, Colorado. And in fact, the founder of that program, that's been operating for over 30 years. The founder of that program is a very good friend of mine. He's currently a port commissioner for the Port of Bellingham, and he's still on that board. And he's got a real passion and a real heart for this sort of thing. And we've talked about modeling. It's called the 13th step. And it's loosely based on the Alcoholics Anonymous program, which is a 12-step, if anybody's familiar with that. But the whole first piece of it is to get people connected with family members, with loved ones, or a support system. And part of the challenges that we have is that in some cases we've got low-income housing, and what we'll do is we'll take somebody that's in a substance, is an addiction problem, and then we'll isolate them and put them alone in their own housing. That is just a recipe for disaster. When you isolate them, it's going to exacerbate the problem. It puts them literally into loneliness and back into despair, and they're going to start drinking, they're going to start drugs again. There needs to be a support system. So ultimately, I believe the solution is that we need a public-private partnership where we do something larger than the triage. I mean, Mr. Sadhu just mentioned, I think it was last Monday, that there was the ribbon cutting for the additional 16 beds in the triage centers, but 32 beds is not enough. We need a center where it's a centralized center where we can take people, and if they're on the streets, that we pick them up off the streets, we take them into the centers, we connect them. We identify what the problem is. We connect them, we assess where the problem is, and then we put them into the program that's going to move them away from or towards sobriety and towards self-sufficiency. That is going to require an investment. And right now, I mean, the county has about $5 million in bank capacity. And what that does, that gives the county a very good bond rating. I mean, tax revenues are up. We've got $520 million in new construction. You guys are being assessed a tax whether you know it or not, and that is with property values increasing. You guys know that your property taxes actually go up even though they don't go up. They go up as a result of your assessed value, and that's happening all over Whatcom County. So we're generating money, and at some point, what we're going to need to do is start looking at some of those programs where we can invest in some infrastructure, and I think that's a vital one for us to invest in. But it is going to take a public-private partnership. I know that there are some private partners that have no interest in making money off this project. They're people that truly want to literally donate. And I think $3 million has been pledged to a project. It's just the project isn't there yet. And we have been, through my organization, we've been involved in trying to identify locations. We've been talking to the Port of Bellingham. They're the official economic development organization in Whatcom County. We've been talking to them about properties and that may work for a project like this. But it really is going to take bringing the community together, identifying what the problem is, and really having a will to solve it. And completely and utterly taking off the table that we're going to start identifying where we're going to put tent cities.
Thank you. We have run out of time.
Yeah.
We have made commitments to the candidates to get them out of here. We've already gone 5 minutes over what their commitment is. And so I'd like to offer each of you 1 minute elevator speech. And if you have time to answer any questions of the community after this, then please stick around. And we need to move along. So, go. Yeah. We have made commitments to the candidates, and
So I know.
we're going to start off here on this end.
I'm happy to give my 1 minute up for the woman.
Well, we have 1 minute, and that includes the answer.
I just wanted to explain. My name's Sonia Vold. I am part of this group. We are Sudden Valley. It's a community-driven grassroots effort. One of the reasons that you don't see a lot of us here is because so many in the community feel disenfranchised and they don't have a trust level for anything that the current board puts together. And so they don't show up. We're here, though. And you're talking about affordable housing. You're also talking about our property taxes going up. But the thing is, we don't see anything for that. I moved here in 2012. My property taxes have doubled since then. And also, my dues on my 2 lots here have gone up, I believe, almost 200%. In the last year, they've gone up 102% in 18 months. People that cannot afford housing are being priced out. This is their only opportunity at homeownership. And my concern is that you're not hearing us. And just last month,
Quickly,
in a
please.
vote of the
We're
community, 1,985 members came out and voted, begging for this board to put limitations on these soaring assessment increases.
Okay, thank you.
Help, because they don't want you to know that they aren't respecting that.
I'll give up my 1 minute and I'll
Let her
answer
continue?
that.
Okay.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's the easiest
Please.
way.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that the HOA passed by the state legislature was driven by Seattle communities and new condos and new associations. Somehow, the way the legislature has passed it, it has engulfed everybody. I think there was an attempt to grandfather the previous organizations or HOAs and let the new rule apply to the new associations. This is something legislature need to do that. I have listened to this. Larry is here. It's been going on for almost 2 years right now, and I would really like to say to the current board or future board members that give representation to everybody. That's the democratic values of our country, and we should have voice for everybody. Thank you. I have another appointment to go to.
Thank
so
you all.
Please excuse me. I need to leave. Thank you very much for coming and listening. Thank you.
And Sonia, can I ask you a question quick? Sonia? I believe it's Sonia. So is your board elected? Oh.
Do we have a microphone for Sonia?
Yeah, they are elected, but it is staggered terms, so it favors the incumbents. You know, and again, when you get a disenfranchised community, it's really hard to keep this momentum going through every vote like this. I mean, we literally are having 2 and 3 votes a year. We get hit with special assessments. In the last 3 years, we've had 7 votes. It's too many. It's too much.
Okay, what I would like to encourage you to do is I would like you to run for the next one. It's sort of what got me running last year, is that like there needs to be a change, there needs to be different. So I really encourage you to run, and anyone else who feels the way you do.
Thank you all, and I would like to offer the Sheriff, Bill Elfo, his 1-minute speech so he can get out of here.
Thank you. I just want you to know that we're not about just locking everybody up. We are about treatment and prevention. And within the jail facility, we do have drug treatment, but what we're limited to is by physical space to hold these programs. You know, we have mental health counselors, drug counselors, and they speak through people through a chow hatch in the door. But one thing I don't think anybody's discussed is working with the prosecutor's office. We just got a $900,000 grant from the Department of Justice for law enforcement assisted diversion. And we'll be able to take people with drugs, and that will fund, not funding us, but it will fund the counselors that will be available to help them get into treatment, and people with masters in social work, and we'll be able to deliver them right there. And, you know, if they follow through, they can avoid formal charges being filed. If they don't follow through, then there's a hammer to encourage them and to motivate them to get into treatment and to follow through. So that program is in its infancy. And I want to say we have an incarceration prevention and reduction task force that's been in business since about 2015, making recommendations for treatment and prevention and less reliance and use on jails. And I've been endorsed for re-election by the current chair and the former chair. And they wrote a nice quote about me. It's on my literature out there. I won't take more of the minute to read it. But thank you very much. Thank you for the afternoon. I, too, have in a couple of minutes, I have to leave for another forum in Ferndale.
This is the season for events like this, so we have to give the candidates the courtesy to answer the questions in the time that they've asked for. And Ms. Gilfin?
Boy, there's so much that just came up. It's like, what can I say? I could talk about me or I could talk about you. I'm going to choose to talk about you. It's my opinion, after 10 years of doing deep research in this and 40 years prior of that being in business, that we are in probably one of the biggest taxpayers' crisis that we've ever been in the history of my life, at least. And I think that what we have done is we have become government bloated. And I'm not a person who says no taxes. I think we have to have taxes. We have to provide basic services. But I believe that our corporatized governments have become bloated and over-codependent upon private corporations, and the combination of those is actually gutting our society, especially when you consider that most of Whatcom County's taxes, 60 to 70% go to the sheriff's department and to law and justice and health. So all of these things that are actually sucking the energy and the wind out of our sails as a community can be mitigated if we simply start investing in people and stop investing in more facilities, more fancy things. The actual return on investment by doing mental health treatment inside the jail system is substantially less. It can be as much as $7 to $45 difference. If you invest in substance abuse before jail, you get a 7-to-1 return. If you invest in certain behavior modifications before jail or outside of a jail system, you can get a far better return on investment. It is very expensive to house people in jails as a mental health facility and then punish them inside there. You lose traction and people come out oftentimes dealing with complex post-traumatic stress. That's why I've spent 10 years studying this, because we're in problems. And I've been working on solutions. Part of the reason the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force exists is because I filed papers with the county council explaining why we had problems, why we needed to not pass that tax. And it was after that that they created the IPRTF. I sat on that committee as a proxy. And a lot of the reasons that the sheriff is talking about all these changes that we have is because I was one of the people with Irene Morgan who stood up determinedly for the past 10 years and have been testifying consistently, written papers, filed reports, done the work to stop the mass incarceration of citizens in Whatcom County. That's why I'm running for sheriff, because I want to continue the work.
Thank you. And down to the county executive.
Oh, I gave up my minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming. Really do appreciate it.
And I gave it my time.
Thank you, all candidates, and I hope
And
everybody...
if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to stick around for anyone.
I hope everybody remembers to vote. The ballots are going out this week, and so, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll be starting up with our state candidates here in just a couple of minutes.